and welcome to Get the Table, another wrestling roundtable discussion podcast with myself, Adam Wilborn, and the Dadley Boyz of WhatCulture, Michael Hamflett and Michael Sidgwick, here to discuss another burning wrestling issue. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily wrestling podcasts where we review Raw, SmackDown, the Wednesday Night War between AEW and NXT, pay-per-views, we have interviews, more roundtable discussions like this one, and a roundup of the week, complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WrestleCulture. But as I said, joined by Michael Hamflett and Michael Sidgwick. And gents, we are gathered here today to talk about the current state of wrestling and why wrestling is so hard to watch right now. Michael Hamflett, this was inspired by yourself. Just tell us a little bit about the situation we're currently in the moment and why it feels not just surreal to watch wrestling right now, but why it's almost difficult.
Wrestling isn't a sport, is it? It's a live performance art. When we entered the period in which several sports were going to be operating behind closed doors in order to get functional games played before the point where even that was no longer tenable, there was the discussion that wrestling might be a behind closed doors operation or even an empty arena operation. And now here we are with the empty arena solution. It's not going to be a solution for much longer. Obviously, WrestleMania is going to be taped because WWE anticipate they won't be able to even do what they've been doing for a great deal longer. And I just feel like, with the best will of both WWE and AEW, and this is partisan, I think fundamentally in terms of a product point of view, both sides are doing the best. I don't think this is the product. So you can pick at all the individual bits of it, but this is not what wrestling is. Wrestling without a crowd is not wrestling. It's just a case of two people going through the motions of a predetermined art form for nobody in particular. The audience live are so fundamentally wired into why the wrestlers do the things that they do that expecting them to do something else is no longer wrestling. It's a version of the wrestling we watch, but it's not pro wrestling. It's pro-worked, choreographed shoot fighting or throwing each other around and trying to dress it up as something more, throwing each other around in nice gear with overblown entrance, but it's not pro wrestling.
Michael Sidgwick, what do you think of the state of wrestling right now?
I have to echo Michael Hamflett. It's like I need a release, but ultimately when I'm walking around or I'm like just not walking around, I'm in the house, but obviously I have to go to the supermarket to get some food. You see people and you start to think of them differently. You don't know what their motivations are, but you're thinking, if you're not walking in the direction of a supermarket, where exactly are you going right now? You see people who have decided to have one last pint in the pub before, when they were told you probably shouldn't go to the pub, before they were actually told, you know what, we'll try to get away with one there. You actually can't go to the pub. You've been ordered not to go to the pub. I see people who took huge advantage of that and just went, let's get a couple of pints in before all this blows over. And you just think to yourself, like, who the do you think you are? What do you think makes you so special that you get to endanger the lives of so many different people because you're so special and that you have to have a pint? And when I apply that mentality to what's going on, wrestling's having the pint. Wrestling's having that one last pint in the pub where Hollywood productions are shutting down. Sport is shutting down. Like everything beyond like news updates and like Fox, NBC, BBC, there's news broadcasts that are still ongoing because they have to be. They provide a public service. But when pro wrestling's doing shows that no matter how safe or distant it might appear on camera, that really could be further far from the truth when you think what goes on behind even a skeleton staff of a television show in pro wrestling. Even that backstage area is going to have way more traffic. I don't care about the measures that they claim that are going to be in place. They're probably going to lie to us because they're pro wrestling promoters. That's the way it is. Wrestling is the industry that's having that one last pint in the pub. And I just think that it's always had an outlaw spirit to it, a rebel spirit where there's no union to it. It's barely covered in the mainstream press. And I think they are using that kind of shadowy nature that pro wrestling's always had to its own almost selfish benefit in these times.
Yeah, I want to know your thoughts on that, Michael Hamflett, because for me, it's surreal. You know, we get up every morning, myself and Andy Murray and our editor, Ben Roy, and we sit in front of our computers in our own houses and we talk about ongoing wrestling when, like you say, anywhere else you look, it has completely ground to a halt. Even, you know, regular stuff, like you say, with like TV soaps or, you know, just simple, a couple of people talking to a camera TV shows, they're off now because of all the people who have to work backstage. And it really hit me today when we were talking about this, because we were talking effectively about WWE cramming in, and AEW as well, to be fair, cramming in all these tapings to get in matches that they want to get sorted out, TV tapings, and in WWE's case, the biggest pay-per-view of the year for them, cramming that all in just before a definitive lockdown is ordered in Orange County, I do believe. And it just feels like Michael Sidgwick says, you know, myself and Andy were getting criticised last week for going into the office to present on the news because whilst we hadn't been explicitly told not to go in, it had been implied. And whilst we were trying to take as many measures as possible, the fact that myself, Andy, and our editor Ben Roy, as I said, only really interacted with each other in that scenario, it does feel completely counteractive to what else is going on in the world. Is that it, or is it simply the lack of atmosphere that makes it such a tough thing to deal with right now?
It's certainly a bit of what you described there. You have to, in defense of you, because of course I would defend you, and even in defense of the wrestling companies, this has changed almost every day. So what might have happened several days ago can't be judged on where we're at today. And that can be over a 24-hour period. And we're still in that period now. Sidgwick tells a story of going to the supermarket. And I think everybody's got that certain experience when they're passing somebody else in the street. And that's only going to be intensified as the days go on until we reach an absolute point, which we're probably not there yet. We get to exist in a world comfortably currently because of people that are being classified as key workers. Key workers are health professionals, they are shop workers, they are delivery drivers, they are people that this current version of the world can't live without. And pro wrestlers aren't those people. Soap stars aren't those people. Footballers aren't those people. And there's kind of an inadvertent arrogance from the wrestling industry at large that believes that it is beyond all of that because they are key workers in a different way. They are public servants in the way that they can give us a form of escapist entertainment. And I can't speak for AEW, but I've got enough experience with WWE to know that in a much brighter future, hopefully, there will be documentaries made of how this company slogged on through the world's hardest time in a generation and how they got through, and show after show after show will be lauded as this great success, and how Vince McMahon rallied the troops before everybody got sent home and said, well, the show must go on. And that now is coming forth when the lack of atmosphere gives you something else to think about. It is one thing to watch a show that isn't fully finished because there is no crowd. It's quite another for your mind to wander to other things when that show's going on. I felt it during the 20 minutes that was given to the Raw tag team match that featured 4 wrestlers in the ring, a referee, a manager, 2 people on commentary, a tag team with the commentators, not to mention whoever was involved in production. If everybody there is considered essential personnel, then at this point in this week of where we're at in this current process, that's probably too many. And my mind was allowed to wonder that because I'm watching 20 minutes of wrestling playing out to silence. If I was watching the full-bodied product with an audience, I probably wouldn't really have time because wrestling would serve as the escapist entertainment it's supposed to be. It, for a few weeks now, hasn't really been the escape.
Sort of as a follow-up to this, Michael Sidgwick, and you know, we can't really give any definitive answers because we are not scientific personnel, but how long can you see this going on for? Because we talked about the lockdown and we were speculating on the news this morning about the fact that it's going to take us up to a few days after when the Raw after WrestleMania will no doubt be aired. But after that, if conditions remain the same, excluding a full-on lockdown, Michael Sidgwick, what happens then?
I'm honestly shocked that it's gone on as far as it has. I think WWE have taken the smartest route possible by taping so much stuff in advance. I still think, with current projections of how everything's going to unfold, that they'll still be left without original material. And who cares? Who gives an absolute toss, right? I do worry that AEW they've released 2 episodes of Dark. What? Like, you might need something. It just seems absolutely ridiculous. The thing about this is that it's irresponsible to do, in my opinion, with even AEW's approach where there's no fans but there's guys in the crowd. Even WWE's approach. If you look at what's happening with Rey Mysterio and Dana Brooke, then if they aren't already afflicted, then there's certainly that implies how easy it could potentially be. It feels like if they don't already carry the thing that's making all of this change, then that's how easy it would be. If you look at the traffic that's going in and out of that WWE Performance Center on a weekly basis, a lot of the Raw crew, this week, unlike last week, a lot of the NXT crews went in and out of there, and the SmackDown crew and the guys who are going to be producing WrestleMania. It just feels like you're inviting it. You're just absolutely inviting it. And it feels like statistically, it's impossible for someone not to get afflicted in that time frame if they're not already. In the case of Rey Mysterio and Dana Brooke, when I watched AEW last week, I was so overjoyed for, I would say, about 70% of it, that they'd managed to emulate an atmosphere. MJF, I prefer to watch him over a group of wrestling fans in a lot of cases, because he was literally trying to get himself over, but at the point where he was accentuating and enhancing the matches and not detracting from them with his big, boorish, awful chanting. And then I looked at Jake Roberts in the crowd and I thought, what on earth are you doing? This guy sounds like the best friend of what's going on. It sounds like his voice in itself is a target, and it's a horrible thought. Tully Blanchard's no spring chicken. Jim Ross on commentary is an older gentleman. I believe he's 68 years old now. And even if they're not physically present, the whole idea of what's going on is that there could be a 68-year-old who could interact indirectly and yet still get afflicted with one of these fit and healthy young men who are still putting on a show for our benefit. And it feels like it would be incredibly more beneficial to us if you just simply did not bother. Another point I'd like to make before we get to the next question, I've alluded to it already, is that it's not just the people in the ring. It's not just the optics of how bad it looks if AEW has people in the stands, Ryan Satin. That's not just the optics. If you look at the backstage area of any given pro wrestling show, I don't care how you mean to observe the distance. It's just every single government guidance, apart from the ones that aren't run by complete and utter inept dickheads, is telling you right now to limit the amount of distance that you have, the amount of connection that you have with different people. It's like wrestling's inviting this for what purpose? So I can enjoy MJF for 2 hours. It's like I'll go back and watch him on Dynamite. I'll watch his MLW stuff, you know.
Ashley Young, of all people, English football player currently playing in Italy, noted that from his experiences in Italy, to the point now when people go to the shops, again, still there, one of the last remaining things you can really do to leave the house, people are wearing masks and gloves because of touch. So not just the people backstage at a wrestling show, imagine all the things that person A touches, that then person B touches, the people it takes to set up a ring, even if the wrestlers themselves are the ones set up the ring, are they all wearing gloves? You know, what measures can they go to such a level to put on the shows that we've seen without there being numerous ways in which they can fall into traps that the entire world is being asked not to fall into by just staying in?
I want to talk a little bit about WrestleMania now. Of course, they're going to be taping it this week to be aired in a week and a half's time over that big weekend. And as much as it's admirable that the show is going on, and it's great that we do get to see these matches they've been building to, in some cases, since the start of the year, you can't help but feel it's just a huge disappointment, and it's slightly ruining the whole spectacle of WrestleMania. That's putting aside the whole disappointment you must feel for people like Rhea Ripley and Drew McIntyre, who will be really getting some incredible WrestleMania moments. And whilst to play the devil's advocate, it's hard to turn around and say, okay, well, if you postpone WrestleMania, when do you postpone it till? You can't help but feel a sense of disappointment around all this, Michael Hamflett.
Yeah, WrestleMania to me is the sort of thing that, like, if you were a James Bond fan, you would put all your videos in a box and you would pick one weekend and watch them all year. And let's say this thing we can't mention is called Lynn, and it's just spilt orange juice all over my WrestleMania because, yeah, it's ruined. It's ruined. It's not WrestleMania other than in name. It's just another night at the Performance Center. We can't yet speak to the quality or the enjoyment level of what it is exactly they're going to produce. There's been all these quite wonderful rumors of how daft they're going to get with the likes of John Cena versus The Fiend and AJ Styles versus The Undertaker. And as a set of standalone things, I will sit and I will watch and I will hope that I am entertained, sports entertained for, say, 3 hours on a Saturday, 3 hours on a Sunday. But this, again, will only be a WrestleMania in the way that WWE pays tribute to itself via the voice of Michael Rappaport in years to come. It won't be, as we all sit watching it, WrestleMania. It'll be a card with big matches. In a way, it does actually provide WWE with an opportunity that they probably won't take to create a season finale. Wrestling, WWE has never stopped because Vince McMahon doesn't know the meaning of the word. But if they have to, and if this is the last thing that can tape, what a way for WrestleMania to finally be the end of something like it never is in this generation. What a way for Drew McIntyre to win the WWE title, and then us to go out off the air with a big fireworks display, and then wrestling to just take a break, like live up-to-date content to take a break for a little bit. And then we come back with this like fresh roster of stars that are coming off the back of their big WrestleMania moments, a hard reset for the roster, a chance for them all to rest their bodies. That should be what WrestleMania is every year, but it's on to Raw the next night and on to SmackDown days after that. So this could be an opportunity that has been forced upon them rather than one that they would choose to take.
Yeah, it just feels like, given what we've just been discussing, to then get the conversation around WrestleMania, it just feels like a distillation of the point. Like, I just can't get excited about WrestleMania. I mean, even I get excited about WrestleMania. I'm someone who, when I see a wrestling ring, right, and I know for a fact that there are no cable ropes on there, that the ropes are real, I automatically just think, oh, well, the show's going to be rubbish. Or the show's going to be soulless because it's obviously a WWE show because they don't have cable ropes. I'm at that stage of my fandom where, thank God I'm a critic, otherwise I would... might not even watch it, guys. Might not even watch it. But even I get absolutely hyped about WrestleMania. It's impossible not to. You've got so many cherished subjective memories of the sheer scope of it. I don't care about being corny, the magic of it. And despite the fact that it is no longer that company, maybe some people, Michael Hamflett, are in fact loyal to a set of initials. They still do something like Kofi Mania, where you think, I don't care what company you are or how much better that company is, AEW over WWE. That moment was still in some way a quintessentially WWE moment. Like, they've still got it in them to do something WrestleMania at WrestleMania. This isn't WrestleMania. Like, I couldn't give a toss what you do. It isn't WrestleMania, but at the same time, that's the least of our problems, isn't it?
Hamflett raises a good point there, Sidge, because you talk about...
Yeah, just talk for 2 minutes, but, never mind.
No, I just mean in terms of the fact that you think of WrestleMania, like you say, is this season finale, but we already know that WWE are taping the Raw after WrestleMania. But then the question in my mind, and we all don't really know, it's just a case of speculation right now, is what on earth does that lead to? What future? You can't just turn around and say, well, don't forget, Money in the Bank in a empty arena in the Performance Center is coming up in a month's time, or Extreme Rules or anything like that. Doesn't seem feasible.
Yeah, it's odd. I've got no idea how they're going to approach this. I mean, ultimately, they can't just... I think AEW were cute with it because they just said last week, next Dynamite. As it happens, touch wood so far. I mean, am I touching wood? Do I want Dynamite to go ahead? I really don't even know. But they were saying next Dynamite instead of next week. What does WWE say? Next Raw. I mean, they've already borrowed the hard cam, so they might as well. Ultimately, it's just odd. You can't build towards anything because you build paths and you build storylines for destination, and it's all a complete unknown at this point. I don't know what to do. Do I want them to even do it? I've got no idea. But I'll tell you one thing. It's absolutely crap without professional wrestling. The next person, we've just abandoned the take. We'll never again, even if the pro wrestlers' bodies are crying out for it, no one will ever say, with the whole moral pandering, all the rest of it, oh, we should do an off-season. Wrestling should have an off-season. No, never. This is absolutely rubbish. I need it. If the world isn't in meltdown, then wrestling, I'm sorry, I don't care how much it hurts wrestlers, okay? I don't care how little you get paid compared to your corporate masters who own you. You're not allowed to stop. Please never stop again. Never stop again.
In the desperation for content adjacent to the things I actually like, I've mulled over watching all the awful seasons of The Simpsons on Disney Plus just because I've never seen them before and they're new, because I can't have the other thing I like, wrestling or anything close to it. Maybe I should watch New Simpsons.
Don't, right? You said a lot of stupid things in the course of our very close friendship over the past few years. You say things like, oh, that episode of NXT was better than AEW. You say things like, I haven't completely given up hope on WWE yet. Don't watch New Simpsons. Do not do it. It's absolutely abysmal. To
bring it back to wrestling finally here, Michael Hamflett, how do we salvage this? What do we do next? I mean, there's no real obvious answer to that, but give us some shred of hope to cling on to.
Watch-alongs. Watch-alongs is the obvious answer. We have for free now, the WWE Network for most people. On Backstage last week, Renee Young and Paige talked through Paige's sort of very important match with Emma from NXT, and then they passed some comments on the WrestleMania 32 triple threat between Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, and Becky Lynch. What WWE have at their disposal is a network and archive full of content and a bunch of legends that all know how to work Skype because they've all done podcasts. So for them not to take advantage of that at the moment in the place of live original content, I think is insane. They've already, in 2 weeks, and I know Cedric will be loath to compliment them for this, but they've already gone a little bit smarter with the choices of the matches that they've used on Raw. I have absolutely no problem with them filling Raw time with old content because it means that we're not having people touching each other or anything like that. And the Brock triple threat from Royal Rumble was a lovely thing to have to break up the monotony of the empty arena. The Charlotte Flair match was relevant to her storyline. So they kind of are figuring out that the content at their disposal can still be used for good. Steve Austin and Bret Hart on their podcast, which everybody should go and watch because they wrestled when most wrestling was better, just spoke briefly, even just briefly, about the anatomy of their WrestleMania 13 match, and it was the highlight of that podcast. They've done audio versions of that before. Steve Austin's done that with The Rock. Loads more of that. It is fresh insight when 90% of the network documentaries they make is void of anything new.
I don't know where we go from here. I mean, a cure? That'd be fantastic. All I know is that someday in the future, and I don't know how distant it is, I've got no idea, that these shows, when they finally come back, are going to be absolutely spectacular. As I've said, I think it was in the previous podcast, AEW needs to do a Blood and Guts match. The very first thing they do. That should be the very first show that they do. It'll be absolutely electric. As for WWE, I think whenever it all returns to normal, the absolute best thing they should do, this is my opinion, and I want a fantasy book because there's absolutely nothing else to analyze without that feeling of, oh God, just why is this even happening? I want WWE's first full arena show to be kickstarted. I don't care about the brand split. It could be a Raw, could be an NXT, but if it's a SmackDown, I want Baron Corbin to come out. Because can you imagine, like, oh God, back. And then you get Baron Corbin coming out with that stupid, massive grin on his face, launch into a 2-minute promo, and then just someone come out, give us an interruption. I hate interruptions, but in this case, I will go for it. Just say someone come out and say, no, not anyone but you, like anyone but you, come out, and then he gets beaten up, and then a really good, entertaining wrestler issues an open challenge, and then you get a 12-minute ultra banger on WWE TV. That would be the best way to approach it. I'm already thinking ahead because whatever this present is now, I can't deal with it. It's irresponsible. It's eerie at times. It's kind of euphoric and cute. With even from Byron Saxton all the way to Sammy Guevara, I've popped my tits off during these empty arena shows, but it's just not on. It ultimately is not on. How they build towards the next shows, no idea. Absolutely not.
Well, like you say, both making good points there. I mean, they did over 800,000 people, I do believe, watching their WrestleMania 30 replay recently. But Michael Sidgwick, you sum up best there. Whenever this blows over, whenever this gets back to normality, I cannot wait for it. And like you say, the crowd pops are going to be back to the Attitude Era. So let us know your thoughts on why wrestling's so hard to watch right now in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts, of course. But you can let us know your thoughts on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. And watch there. Follow all three of us. So follow Michael Hamflett at
Michael Hamflett.
Follow Michael Sidgwick at
You can follow me at Sidgwick.
Follow me at Adam Wilborn. Follow us all at WhatCulture WWE. As I said, this has been Get the Table. My thanks to the Dadley Boyz. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.